find nothing.
Yeah, I seen Laura today. She didn't seem to be too cheery today.
I haven't seen her at all.
Yeah, she would have gotten a happy place.
Oh no.
What's up? I shouldn't be here.
Why?
I should have been here yesterday. Not feeling good, I guess.
They have been waiting at times this weekend.
If it's sound going out, then I just want to welcome everybody in public and welcome everybody on Facebook as well tonight. And we're going to call this meeting to order. I'll ask the clerk for the roll call, please.
Good evening, Your Worship. All members are present.
Thank you very much. Are there any review or revisions or deletions to the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we've got a motion, be it resolved the City Council approves the agenda as printed. Moved by Councilor Ferrier, second by Councilor Jelly. All in favor? That is carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on to the item number 6, the review and adoption of the council minutes. And I got a motion be resolved that City Council approves the following minutes as printed. A, the regular meeting of council held on September 1st, 2020, and the special meeting of council was held on September the 3rd, 2020. Moving to second, Councilor MacArthur, second by Councilor Foley. Any comments on those two sets of minutes? All in favor? That is carried. Tonight we have a public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act, Municipal Act, and other statutes. This public meeting scheduled tonight is for one zoning bylaw amendment application. The Planning Act requires that a public meeting be held before council decides whether to pass the bylaw adopting a proposed amendment. The public meeting serves two purposes. First, to present to the council and the public the details and the background to the proposed amendment, and second, to receive comments from the public and agencies before decisions made by council. So I now declare the meeting to be open and to be a public meeting pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act, and the zoning bylaw amendment application to be heard this evening is application ZBA 2020-02. The applicant is the Corporation of the City of Temiskaming Shores, and the purpose of the application is to amend the zoning bylaw to rezone the subject lands from prime agricultural A1 to prime agricultural special exemption 10 to permit the continuation of existing agricultural uses and to prohibit residential uses. So Logan Blondie will present the application for.
Good evening. Thank you, Your Worship. Further to your introduction, this is a zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 2020-02 for Robert Cook on the subject lands of 843313 Dales Road in Innisford. The purpose of the amendment is the application seeks to rezone the subject lands from prime agricultural or A1 to prime agricultural special exemption 10 to permit the continuation of existing agricultural uses and to prohibit residential uses. The subject lands are the retained lands of a consent application from last year, B 2019-05, which was conditionally approved in 2019. The zoning bylaw amendment application is a condition of consent for this application. Of note, in 2019, the application was to sever 2.24 hectares of that parcel of land containing an existing house and other farm-related accessory buildings, which is surplus to agricultural use for the property. So the proposed retained portion has 62 hectares or 153 acres of agricultural land. This slide depicts the subject lands, which is outlined in black. This slide depicts an aerial image of that same area, noting that the southwest corner of the parcel was the severed lands from 2019. The official plan designation, the subject property is designated as prime agricultural land in the City of Temiskaming Shores official plan, and the proposed zoning bylaw amendment meets the intent of this plan. No new construction is proposed on the retained property, and this amendment will preclude residential uses on the retained property. The retained agricultural portion exceeds the minimum lot area requirements for agricultural purposes. The current zoning, of course, is a prime agriculture, or A1, and this slide depicts an excerpt from the city's zoning bylaw, and you'll see a single detached dwelling is permitted as both a primary as well as an accessory use. The proposed zoning, the amendment seeks to ensure the property is used for the continuation of existing agricultural uses and to prohibit residential uses. For additional information, the notice of the public hearing was advertised in the Temiskaming Speaker beginning on August 26, 2020. The application was also circulated to staff and no concerns or objections were received. And there were no comments or concerns received from outside agencies or from members of the public at the date of the preparation of this presentation. For the next steps, an administration and planning report will be presented for consideration at the October 6, 2020 regular meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Logan. If there's any members of the public that want to speak to this issue, they can put their questions in on the chat box, and our corporate services director will read those in a few minutes. And any members of council want to make any comments on this application tonight? So, seeing none. Shelley, is there any comments in the chat box? So, if there's no other comments or no comments at all, then I'll now declare this portion of the public meeting to be closed and advise the council will give due consideration before the next council meeting to any amendments that have to be made there. So, first question and answer period. Anybody got a question of council at this point? Any in the chat box at all? So, if not, we will move right into the presentations, and we're going to give Laura Lee a few minutes to do a quick presentation on the audited statements for 2019, and then we're going to move on to the other presenters. So.
Good to go. Good evening, Mayor and Council, staff, members of the public. Tonight we'll be presenting the 2019 Consolidated Audited Financial Statements for the City of Temiskaming Shores. On September 8, 2020, the draft 2019 statements were presented to the Corporate Services Committee by the Municipal Auditor, Steve Acklin of Kemp, Elliott & Blair. Due to COVID-19, I will be presenting both the audit opinion letter and a brief presentation of the Consolidated Statement of Financial Position, and the Note 13 to the statements being a comparison of the cash budgeting basis. So for the opinion letter, which we have up here on the screen, I won't read the entire letter, which can be found on pages 2 and 3 of your consolidated financial report, which is within your council package. I will just read the opinion section. We have audited the consolidated financial statements of the Corporation of the City of Temiskaming Shores, which comprise the consolidated statement of financial position as at December 31st, 2019, and the consolidated statements of operations, change in net financial assets, net debt, and cash flows for the year then ended, and notes to the financial statements, including a summary of significant accounting policies. In our opinion, the accompanying consolidated financial statements present fairly, in all material respects, the financial position of the Corporation of the City of Temiskaming Shores as at December 31st, 2019, and the results of its operations, change in net financial assets, net debt, and cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So that means we passed our report card with regards to our audit. So what we're going to go through, if you want to just go down to the next page, I'm logging up here. We're going to go down to 2 different documents. We're going to look at our consolidated statement of financial position, and then we're going to look at Note 13, which is a cash budgeting basis, which is how we do our budgeting every year, which is a more familiar document for council's review. So you can see that our financial assets in 2019 were $13.247 million versus $11.186 in 2018. This is an increase overall of $2.06 million. This is comprised of increase in our cash. So in 2019, we had some investments that were due, that had matured late in the year, and to ensure we had proper cash flow for the year, we were restructuring our investment policy, so we did not reinvest those funds, so we see an increase in 2.2 million in our cash. We also had received an additional one-time funding of $626,000 from federal gas tax, and we had also received our modernization funding. So these are items that attributed to our increase in our cash. In our investments, you'll see we have a slight decrease of about $381,000, and that again relates to not reinvesting our maturing investments. Our taxes receivable are fairly comparable. We did have some late supplement billings in the year, which were due in early 2020, so that relates to some of the increase. And of course, we have our regular collections that we attribute now. At the end of 2020, for our 2020 statements, I think we'll probably see a significant increase in that, since we have not done any of our normal collection procedures that we normally do with regards to properties that are in registrable position. So I can't say that it will be in such a favorable position come 2020, but we will continue to work at that. Our accounts receivable, we see an increase of $262,000, and this again usually relates to our receivables in relation to mostly our PDAC and our other outstanding funding claims. For our liabilities, we saw an increase from over 2019. We have 16.2 million, which includes our landfill closure, our post-closure estimates, our municipal debt, and our deferred revenue. So our AP and accrued liabilities, this usually relates to the timing of our year-end invoices and when they're received and paid. And the accrual of our some capital projects. In this case, we have the capital projects, the library and the golf course road bridge, which were set up as payables, due to the timing again of the invoices. For our deferred revenues, you'll see in 18 we have none. In 19 we have 845,000. This relates to our unused gas tax, and again the one-time funding is also incorporated in there. In 2018 we utilized all of our gas tax towards our roads program. In 2019 we only used a portion, so we have some of that which we are utilizing in our 2020 budget. For our municipal debt, we actually saw a decrease, so this is actually really good. We had new debt of about $914,000, but we had debt repayment of $1.3 million, which means that we were able to pay off some of our stuff and not acquire as much debt. The library was anticipated to be in here, but again, due to the delay in the start in 19, that project is now a 2020 project. So again, we will see that debt executed in 2020 as opposed to 19 when it was originally proposed. But a positive thing at this case is that we were able to reduce our net debt. So the net debt figure, so net financial assets, net debt, this is a key number. This is really the number that we focus on as part of the audit. So in 2019, our net debt, our net financial assets, in this case a net debt, is only 2.993, whereas last year we were at a 3.9. So we're seeing a decrease of $963.5 thousand. This is based on the budget that council had passed. Overall, from our budget, we had been anticipating a $363,000 increase in our net debt. So when you take this into consideration, we have savings of $1.3 million. So we've actually increased what we anticipated putting into reserves. And our accumulated surplus takes into consideration all of our tangible capital assets, our inventories for supplies, and our prepaid expenditures, which is mostly our insurance costs. So then we're going to move to page 17, which is a document that we are more familiar with because it's our cash-based budgeting. So we'll go briefly through that. We budgeted $27 million for our revenues. This is all of our operating revenues, including our environmental, water, and sewer revenues. But we had actuals of $28.7 million. We anticipated having capital expenditures of $604,000 and new debt of $2.7 million. We had capital expenditures of revenues. Capital revenues of $604,000. In reality, we brought in $789,000, and we only executed our $914,000 in debt. Again, this is in relation to the fact that we did not execute the debenture for the library. So overall, we were fairly close on our budgeting with our revenues. We had anticipated budgeting $30,348,695, and we came in at $30,402,389. So pretty close. Staff did a great job. For our expenditures, for operating, we were slightly over. We had budgeted $24.4 million. We came in at $24.8 million. Our capital expenditures, we budgeted $4.9, came in at $3.6. Again, the library is a key factor in this, and the timing of that project, and the fact that a majority of the project was completed in 2020. Our long-term debt repayment, we had anticipated our payments back at 1.3 in the budget, and we were pretty close on that, so just slightly off on our long-term debt repayment, but overall, we're seeing a decrease in our expenditures over what we budgeted. For a budget that we had originally planned on having a deficit or transferring from reserves to cover of $363, we're actually putting $554,000 into our reserves. So that's a difference of $917,000. So these are the two documents. There are multiple schedules within the financial statements, and I encourage council to review them, look at them. If there's any questions anyone has on those, please don't hesitate to give me a call, and we can go over some of the numbers at your leisure. But that is pretty much it for the presentation of the audit statements. We had a good year. We hopefully will see some positive factors in 2020, but for 19, we're going to wrap it up now and in a very favorable position. So if there is no questions.
Were you going through note 13, you said?
I'm sorry?
Were you going to bring up note 13? You mentioned
this is
that?
note 13,
oh,
actually. Page
okay.
17 is actually note 13.
Okay.
If you go to the top years, you'll see that's notes to the financial statement, so that's number 13.
Okay.
So, like I said, there's multiple schedules and stuff within the financial statements, which were included in your council package. And if anyone has any questions or wants to go over any of those documents in more detail, don't hesitate to give me a call. Come see me in the office, and we can go over any questions that you might have once you have a chance to absorb them a little in more detail.
Any questions from council? Corporate Service Committee went through it line by line pretty well there last week, so
yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks, Laurie.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time this evening.
We're going to just take about a 2-minute break and sanitize the podium and everything. And
didn't spit on it.
so.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
And then we're trying to be COVID friendly, sanitizing our podium and our microphone, and so between each presentation. So. The new role for our clerk, sanitation. Thank you, Logan. Appreciate that. So, our second presenter tonight is regarding the Local Forest Management Corporation proposal, and Jeff Barton is here, as well as John Kenrick from the Temiskaming Advisory Team, and we've been working on this since 2013, so we're finally getting somewhere. So I'd like John and Jeff to come to the podium and make their presentation, and we'll put some of the information up on the screen here as well. Welcome, gentlemen.
With your permission, may I lower my mask a little?
I don't see a reason why not. So we can understand you better now, John.
Hear me. First, thank you very, very much, Mayor Kidd and Council. I understand you circulated that material, so I'm not going to try and do it in detail. Topics there. I'd like to focus on things that are a little bit of background just to bring you up to date on the project, some recent ongoing actions and some decisions, and an action item concerning for you, which is about a local appointee that will be needed sometime in the near future. And then there'll be time for questions from both Jeff and What is a local LFMC? Just to bring you up, the Local Forest Management Corporation. It's a self-sustaining Crown agency. It's established at the discretion of the government under the Forest Tenure Modernization Act. That act was put in place when the industry had problems during the recession. It was to put in statutes and recommendations to improve the health of the industry. And the provision of a local forest management corporation was one of those recommendations. It's governed by a board of directors with local representation from municipalities, First Nations, and the forest industry. It holds the license, the Sustainable Forest License. Temiskaming is one of the few units in the province that the Crown still manages that unit, one of the only units. After about 5 attempts, I think, in history to get a successful sustainable forestry license, has never been completed. It provides for and promotes sustainable forestry, sustainable forest industry, and the sustainable communities, both Indigenous and municipal. The corporation will have the right to market, sell, and enable access to a predictable and competitively priced supply of forest materials. And it provides for reading the statute, it provides for economic development opportunities for the forest sector and municipalities and Indigenous communities. Status of the proposal right now, it's been about 7 years. I think we've done 5 ministers' briefings, gone through 2 governments, and partly through COVID. So that has put a lot of roadblocks in terms of some of the progress where we'd like to be right now, but nonetheless, we're making progress. It's been a consensus-building exercise between 12 members, equally represented by 4 municipalities, 4 Indigenous communities, and 4 local industries. On August 21st of this year, government, through an environmental registry notice, proposed to go to managing board to proceed with the second LFMC in the province for Temiskaming district. The other one's in Wawa. Indigenous and municipal notification letters were sent out at the same time, and I know that the city received one. Right now on the schedule is community outreach is occurring, and that's what I'm doing here tonight, and then the balance of this week we'll do the other 3 municipalities that are part of this. The business case is being compiled by the ministry to take to management board. That's sort of the smell test. It's largely about finances, about whether it's truly viable, and that's what we spend a lot of time working on. The local board nomination process, which is one of the to-do items, will be due by late November. This is aspirational. It's hopeful, but it's the schedule we're using. Government's regulatory approval, hopefully by early January. That's the approval that turns on the bank account. That allows you to take trust fund money and start putting it aside. That was supposed to be last April to start with, and it went to October, and more recently it's moved to January. I'll talk about some of the implications of that a little later. There will be an interim government board, largely made up of public servants, that will be in place for a little while, just to keep moving while the public appointment process is ongoing. The public appointment process will be formalized and happen from January 2021 to September 2021. Finally, the issuance of the sustainable forestry license will be handed to the corporation, and they'll be in business. There'll be staffing and office opened and those types of things. I just caution that I won't say optimistic, but it's an aspirational schedule, and it could be subject to change. The benefits of a local corporation. Probably the biggest one is a much stronger voice on a governance board and shared accountability for local, municipal, Indigenous, and forest industry people. Solving local forestry problems. There's an ability and an initiative in the Act to advance the health and sustainability of the Crown Forest and hopefully benefits for local communities in the industry. There is a commitment to recognize and honor wood supply commitments and uses. There's no movement here to take wood away from anybody. In fact, we'd like to grow it a little bit if we could. Provide economic benefits to local municipalities, First Nations, and the forest industry. We don't usually talk about the expectation there's going to be another big sawmill opened up. What is more apt to be is job training for youth, more community awareness, perhaps some community objectives, outreach type things. That would be, I think, more the size of what will come out of this. Resource revenue, one of the things that's unique about an LFMC is the Crown dues that normally go, that's the Crown's ground rent for renting and providing for public use of the forest resources. That usually goes into consolidated revenue. Under this type of an arrangement, the Crown dues stay with this corporation, so they can be spent locally on the objects of the corporation. That's a big plus from our perspective. Chance to do improved promotion and marketing of underutilized forest products, recognition and continued respect for Aboriginal and treaty rights, potential to further reduce wood costs in cooperation with the industry, and develop a broader community outreach program. Those are all potential benefits that can come out of this. I just would like to talk, there's a little bit of duplication here, but just specific benefits to local Indigenous people. First of all, the LFMC recognizes and cannot take away from the rights and protections provided to existing Aboriginal and treaty rights under the Constitution Act. M&R still has a duty to consult. They may delegate some of that consistent with the provisions in the Forest Management Planning Manual. There's reserved director seats for Indigenous communities, as there are for municipalities and for the forest industry. Resource revenue can be collected and then used for, as I mentioned, used for the benefit of the corporation. There are specific objectives in the Act to provide for economic opportunities for Indigenous people, and there will be opportunities for expanded community outreach, including special opportunities for Indigenous people. Is it viable? We've spent a lot of time on this because that's probably the litmus test that will happen at the Management Board mostly. Our preliminary answer is yes. The financial model for the 10-year period of the Forest Management Plan, which runs to 2029, shows a net revenue at the end of the planning period of $1.1 million. There's a couple of graphs in your material that will explain it's higher and then it dips. The net revenue will be used towards establishing about a $500,000 contingency reserve that we'll need to establish. It'll ensure that we can meet any risks that come up during the course of the first 10-year period, and perhaps put some money aside for other corporate objects, the community and Indigenous type of objectives we're trying to fund. The current model assumes the request to government has some caveats in it. This is after a year of delays. One-time non-refundable startup funding, a little over $500,000. There is a transition fund in government, by the way, that has got a place that they can get this should they choose to fund it. Some administration support until 2029 for one position a year. The operational delivery plan will be 2 staff members and a service contract instead of 4 staff members for a while, and it'll get reviewed by the permanent board partway through it for efficiencies. We've done some work with industry to make sure that the risk of the corporation is spread out between the corporation and the industry. The management fee cap of $2 million has been established over 8 years. And that will be charged a different way than it's been historically to the industry. It'll split between the licensees and their percentage of their harvest that they're licensed for, and the larger portion of it will be taken up at I call it the wood that goes over the mill scale at a mill. It'll be paid by the consumer. That's how that works. There's a couple of charts. I was going to reference them. They're these ones, and they're on that first slide that appeared there. It was about viability. They explain a lot of things, and I'll try and do it very, very briefly. You'll notice the amount of revenue that we take in stumpage is completely dependent on the size of the harvest. This unit has a tendency to pulse. In other words, the industry takes most of its wood off in the first couple of years, and then it goes down. We've now lost 1.5 years in this schedule. If you look at this diagram here and you see the first 2 columns, you'll see the annual revenue that came in 1920 was $300,000. This year we're working on $188,000. That's 5 years worth of harvest off this unit. So what we're trying to make is the model work on the balance of the chart. We think it still will, but it certainly would have helped us had we been able to start this at the beginning. Then stumpage revenues, the stumpage revenues to the Crown. These are the revenues that under the operation of the LFMC would belong to the corporation in the future. We didn't get to keep the stuff from the first year, and you'll see that's $1.1 million. So that's one of the challenges we're working with. There's a slide that looks something like this. That's where your $1.1 million comes from. Is the average expenditures for the unit are about $500,000 for the LFMC are about $500,000 a year, and the revenues are about $640,000. You add those up, and that's what creates that surplus. The board appointment process. This is my last topic, but this is the item that leads to a task or a request. Local nominees and evaluation is due by about late November. So that's the time period for that. Just a caution, it's not an interest-based advisory board, but it's a corporate governance board. It's different than most of the boards that have been set up or committees that have been set up around Temiskaming to deal with forestry issues, which have been interest-based things. This is different. This is running a forestry company. The government has the ultimate discretion on the appointments. However, I've done a little bit of research into that. Generally, where there's been reserved seats or local nomination processes, that's what we're recommending for 2 for each of the 3 groups. Government has generally respected that wish. Not 100%. Their prerogative is their prerogative, and they exercise it occasionally. But it has to go through an appointment by the Lieutenant Governor and Council. It's a skill-based nomination process. It's to put some meat into it. That we've developed a skill base. Every candidate that's nominated will be compared against that. Eventually, that will go to the Minister and the Lieutenant Governor. The advisory board that your mayor sits as part of recommended 6 reserved seats, 2 from First Nations, 1 specifically of those is reserved for the Temiskaming First Nation, 2 from municipalities, 1 specifically reserved for the municipality of Temiskaming, and 2 from the local forest industry. This discussion again had mayors and reeves and First Nation chiefs. One of the decisions was that mayors and reeves and First Nation chiefs cannot be members of the board, partially because they have their first fiduciary right is to their municipality, and we're going to require the first one to be to the corporation. So one way of doing it, that puts them in an awkward spot. The second one is there are big guns. If we, as a corporation, need a little support politically, those are the people we'd probably go through. So I think that there's some logic to that decision. The qualified nominees for the reserve seats will be nominated and evaluated by the respective communities by the method of your choosing. Government is not putting any bounds on how you do that. You can do it in a public process, you can do it in council, it's up to you completely. There will be a little twist in that if, as mentioned in the municipal setting, Temiskaming will get 1 appointed seat and 3 municipalities will have to make a decision about what they're going to do with the other seat. But I know that the mayors have had some discussions and we'll have more about that. But that process will be of your making. The reserve seat qualified nominees and their evaluation will then be fed into the public appointments secretariat process for the minister's consideration. All Crown corporations, that's how they get their bodies appointed. There will be a police check, by the way, and a conflict of interest review, which is sort of mandatory for people. Parallel to that nomination process, the public appointments secretary will advertise publicly online for other candidates that may wish to apply to and those candidates will be considered at the minister's discretion. We have very little control over that part of it. So there's one stream that's the 6 reserved ones, and there's the other stream that comes out of an online public appointment secretariat process. And the minister will then, government will make a decision based on those things. The skill matrix, and just a little bit about it, seeking a strong blend of skills across the board. I don't think you'll find anybody that has all of these things. This is a bit of a wish list. There's 12 skills listed, 4 sort of types, and I'll just mention them so you have a feeling for it. The first one, and we thought it was important, which is this notion of fiduciary duty, that first of all, everyone should be obliged to have an allegiance to the objects of the corporation. You have to like the outcomes this corporation is working towards. The next group I would call, and this is my words, but soft experience-based ones, analytical and critical thinking, interpersonal communications, strategic planning, sort of focus on the big stuff like a board should be doing, and governance expertise. The next category is some blend of, there's 5 or 6 here, I'll just mention 2 of them. With forestry knowledge, which can either be the business of forestry or forest ecosystem knowledge, or First Nation traditional ecological knowledge, or forest planning knowledge. It would be nice to have a blend of all of those, but it's not limited to any one of them. local expertise, the most lengthiest discussion at the advisory committee was the importance of this one. Wanting to make sure that there should be some acid test there that people have a sound knowledge of local, I would use history, issues, complexities, and nuances. Temiskaming has had a lot of nuances over the years, and that's an understanding of that environment is probably useful. There's some harder skills, which I'm not going to go into detail: financial, human resource, risk management, and legal. And the last one is common in most boards these days, which is a diversity and representation. The board should reflect gender, linguistic, cultural, and age diversity of the local demographics. That covers my presentation. If you have any questions, Jeff or myself would be pleased to answer them, or you're welcome to just feed us the questions later if you wish.
Thank you very much, John and Jeff. Jeff's here to answer questions. Anybody got questions, John or Jeff, at this point? So, Patricia, Councilor Hewitt.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I have a hard time accepting the fact that no interested parties are formed this corporation or would sit on the board. As we know from 2013, interested parties solely has been, involved in this process. One of the questions I do have is in regards to you talk in one of the sections about hybrid management for structure, and what would that structure look like? We know that in Ontario, the province of Ontario has one of the highest governed forestry management and is quite respected, and as well as the federal legislation as well. My fear is that this would, muddy the legislation, and whoever sits on the board, obviously, it's going to be the governance of the time rather than, historical legislation and culture. Another concern I have, the whole plan is contingent on additional harvesting, and in my opinion, it's already over-harvested as far as Temiskaming is concerned, and there's various bodies that have not been supportive of this process. So I mean, there's the viability is basically more harvesting, and obviously with support of both the different bodies and the fees and funding to move it forward. So there's a lot of when you read over the business plan, there's a lot of vagueness there. So in my opinion, I'd like to know a little bit more about some of those answers. Like I said, what's hybrid management? What's that going to look like? What's the structure going to look like?
Thank you. Just two comments. The process is still open for nominees that people want to put their name forward to be considered to be on the board. That's the public part of the process. The reason we initiated this way to start with was because the Act specifically talked about the groups that are involved. But it is open, and that will be completely at the discretion of the minister. I take your point, though. The reliance on increased harvest, I guess I'd just comment on that. It is a forest that is, and I know there's a whole variety of opinions as to whether it's under-harvested or over-harvested. Given the standards set by the Crown, there's some room for movement there. But in fairness, I don't want to overstate that. It would be somewhat marginal. There's a lot of reasons that just because we wanted to harvest more, it's inoperable. A lot of it's inoperable. There's quality issues. There's mixed wood stands disproportionately high over what should be in a natural forest. So the ability to increase the harvest, I don't think is huge. That would be all I'd use. I think it's, I don't mean to overstate it. Again, it's aspirational. It would help the corporation if we could improve it a bit. It would help the corporation if we could improve the forest a little bit too. And they may be actually linked, those two items. So I take your points well. If any of the more detailed questions you would like to get to me, I can either arrange to answer them or Jeff to answer them, or we can get the plan author from the Temiskaming plan to address them. Okay?
That microphone's live too if you want to just push the button, yeah.
Sorry, thanks for the question also. So I just wanted to touch on your question.
Speak into the
Sorry,
microphone.
I just wanted to touch on your question about the regulations and where the governance sort of overlaps or collides with that. So with forestry activities, there's really 4 regulated manuals that the process follows. The governance, changing governance from a Crown management unit in the case of Temiskaming, the way it is now, to a local forest management corporation, an LFMC, doesn't change those 4 regulated manuals. They still have to follow. They still have to follow them, notwithstanding wherever the governance lies. So there's influence in some of the guidance that happens between the regulations and the delivery of it, but it doesn't change the rules of the road. Just in a nutshell.
Councillor Whalen, you got a question, or Danny?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the presentation. It's interesting. I just spent the last 3 or 4 weeks working with Forest Ontario on driving more recognition for the forest sector. But this is the nuts and bolts of the whole thing, so I appreciate all the work you put into it. The only thing I do want to question, simply because I don't understand all of this, is the asks in the first page to letter to Minister Yakubuski. Is that standard for the organization, or?
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
The first set of asks in the letter to Minister Yakubuski, are those just standard what the ministry provides, or are we?
No. The steering committee has worked at these. These have been different iterations. Essentially, the more it got delayed, the more we felt that it was out of our control, so we should modify the numbers. We kept updating the numbers. We never updated them going down, mind you. They always went up. But that started at, I think, as 416,000, and it was largely in recognition that we'd lost the biggest piece of that initial pulse. And then as that got delayed, we added a little more and a little more. That's where it came from. That number has been to the ministry now, and nobody has choked yet. I wouldn't go as far as to say we've got ministerial approval yet or government approval, but it's still going to managing board, which is a good sign. So it appears we're in the ballpark of what might be reasonable.
Yeah, good. I didn't know if those were standards that the ministry provided on. Good luck with it.
Thank you.
No, we've been talking to ministry staff, so they're the ones that are sort of giving us a little bit of guidance as to what we do now and what we ask for. And this is something that we've missed that first year of revenue coming in, so we're trying to offset that so that we can get through the first 10-year period, get our plan for 2030 or 2029 to 2039, and then we can utilize the full 10-year revenue for the next plan. So that's what we're trying to do. So we've went through a lot of different ministers, like you said there, and I mean it is part of our strategic plan for the city as well to look at mining and forestry and agriculture, and forestry is still a big share of our employment in this area there, so it's something that we've been definitely working on for a long time. So, other questions, comments? So I do have a resolution, and also I want to mention if anyone wants a copy of the skills matrix, I'll email that out to you as well. And I think if anybody has any ideas of who they would like to recommend to sit on this board of directors, please get back to me there, and I can contact them, or we can contact them together, whatever, and just see whether they're interested in sitting on this board. We've got one dedicated rep that's going to be from the Temiskaming area, so that's going to be that seat. The other seat is going to sort of rotate around between Latchford and Temiskaming Swords and Elk Lake, James Township. So I think at this point we're going to come up with different names, and quite possibly we'll end up with somebody from Temiskaming Swords sitting on that board for the first term, and then maybe we'll replace it with somebody else from a different municipality for the second term, and then rotate that way. So if you've got any names, let me know, and we'll try and meet with these people and see whether they're interested in sitting on this board, and we can go from there. Hopefully we can get some recommendations into the ministry before the end of October. I guess we're on sort of a tight deadline. Late November? Okay, we've got an extra month there. So we do have a resolution, and I'll read the resolution there, and you've also got a letter that is being sent to the minister as well, Minister Yakubuski. So the motion reads, whereas Council of the City of Temiskaming Shores that received notification of a proposal to establish a local forest management corporation for the purpose of managing the Temiskaming Management Unit from the MNRF on August 21st, 2020. And whereas the MNRF has posted a voluntary policy proposal on the Environmental Registry, and whereas Council received a presentation on September the 15th from representatives from the Temiskaming Advisory Team regarding the establishment of a local forest management corporation for the Temiskaming Forest Unit, and whereas a request was made to Council to propose a prospective municipal board member from the public that meets many of the skills matrix requirements to sit on the LFMC to be approved through the public appointment process, and whereas support from our local 4 local First Nations, our 4 industry partners, and our 4 municipal partners, as per the letter attached, would be beneficial in supporting this initiative as it proceeds through the government approval process. Now therefore be resolved, the Council of the City of Temiskaming Shores hereby endorses the establishment of a local forest management corporation for the Temiskaming Management Unit and authorizes the Mayor to sign the attached letter on behalf of the many residents who rely on the forest industry for their livelihoods. Moved by Councilor MacArthur, second by Councilor LaFerrier. Any last comments? All in favor of that motion? That is carried unanimously. One opposition. I'll note that. Thanks, Councilor Hewitt. Thank you very much, John and Jeff. Safe trip back home there. So, yes. All right, get back to that. So, just while we're waiting for the podium to sanitize there, we did have a motion from Laura Lee's presentation. I'll read it as well. Be it resolved that the Council of the City of Temiskaming Shores hereby acknowledges receipt and approves the 2019 consolidated financial statements for the City of Temiskaming Shores as prepared by the firm Kemp, Elliott & Blair LLP Chartered Accountants, and the Council directs the Treasurer to provide public notice that a copy of the 2019 consolidated financial statements are available at City Hall and the City's website in accordance with Section 295 of the Municipal Act 2001. So, moved by Councilor Ferrier, second by Councilor Jelly. Any last comments on the financial statements? All in favor? That is carried. And I've got some documents here that need to be signed afterwards, so if everybody can, the councilors can stick around and we'll sign all these documents for the financial statements for Kemp, Elliott & Blair after the meeting tonight. So, and next presentation, Recreation Master Plan. Jim Scott, you're up. So, Trace Studios, and welcome back to the area there, Jim. So,
good evening, Your Worship, Councillors. I'm going to remove this. It's made by one of the people I work with, and you can't hear me through it, and it took me a while to figure out that was your goal. We want to just speak with you for a few minutes before you move forward this evening about the Recreation Master Plan, some of the components in the plan, largely out of the comments that we received, and I think you probably had an opportunity to review the comments. They were very good comments, in fact. And a couple of them showed a real initiative to review the project and come up with a couple of things for us to look at. Just 5 or 6 very, very quick points, and then I'll step back out of the way. We just want to make sure that we reinforced to everybody watching this evening, as well as to Your Worship and councillors, we had 4 goals that we were really trying to achieve in developing this master plan. The first one was that we are developing a platform. We're working with and supporting your recreation and sport delivery groups out there today to make sure that they had a good, strong administrative and physical platform for them to deliver their programs to the residents of Temiskaming Shores. We also want to make sure that we had a platform delivering sport and recreation venues for that purpose. Also, in addition to that, we have a platform for doing both of these over a long period of time, understanding that it will evolve, it will change, and we'll have to adapt as we go forward. The plan is built to be able to adapt to changing environments or changing conditions within the sport and recreation environment within Temiskaming Shores. That's the intent of the plan, that we have the basic understanding of the statistical and physical components to develop our network for residents. The final thing is that we want to develop the 4th platform, if you will, the platform to developing facilities with our regional partners, communities and individuals and groups and other municipalities from outside of Temiskaming Shores to ensure we're working collectively on both cost and delivery of regional facilities. So those were the four things that we were really trying to get to. Within the report, you'll notice in the background information there is a fair bit of statistical data that is meant as it's not really intended to be a qualitative platform to develop the plan from. It is quantitative information that is provided for two specific reasons. One reason is so we understand within a competitive environment how do we deliver products relative to other communities, other cities within this region to ensure we are, in terms of economic development, delivering to those that want to come here and delivering those who are here, comparatively speaking, compared to our neighbors. The second thing is that our neighbors are also our best friends when we get into position of developing regional platforms and understanding when we're doing facilities that we're all going to work together, and the statistics provide information to ensure we're doing it at an equitable level throughout the entire region. So those are the purposes that we included the statistical background. Going forward with the plan, you're going to have a couple of exciting years with the plan, because you'll notice the first three phases of the plan are really to get our platforms in very good condition, and one of those initiatives are going to be your active transportation plan. The master plan that you have before you, that you are voting on this evening, speaks to how residents relate to assets and programs for recreation and sport within Temiskaming Shores. The active transportation plan will talk about how we connect all of those so that residents have choices for how they move around the community, that they have an option to walk, they have an option to bike, they have an option to take vehicles, use transit, that all these work as seamless options for moving around the community. Those are exciting plans to work on. This one you'll be working more with the health unit, who are very, very good at helping program things like active transportation networks. So as we go through that initiative, or as you go through that initiative, you'll have an opportunity to once again refine various components of the plan. So it's going to be an exciting couple of years. In the background, Matt and his group are going to be working hard at ensuring that some of the baseline programs that are required to look at future facilities, parks, are being worked on at the same time. So when we get into fourth phase of development, which is really getting in to make park and facility improvements down the road 4 to 5 years, the platform has been reviewed a few times and it's set to go. So with that, we just want to reinforce those points, say it's very exciting. Again, we want to thank you for the opportunity to collectively work with staff and yourselves. Mayor, we really enjoyed this. Mike, thank you very much. You were a strong supporter. It was an awful lot of fun. So, Your Worship, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Jim. I turn my microphone back on. Any questions, comments from council at this point? Mike, you got comments? Go ahead.
Yes, well, as chairman of the Recreation Department, at this time, I would like to thank the entire Recreation staff, along with Director Matthew Baum, along with former Rec Director Tammy Caldwell, Mayor Kidd, and all councillors for allowing this project to be part of the budget over the last 2 years. This plan was much needed, and we were very lucky to have hired Jim and his crew from New Brunswick. They asked all the right questions. They involved many groups and general public to take part with their ideas, etc., to get what I consider true answers over the next 10 years, and in some cases beyond. It was a pleasure to see all working together and developing these great recommendations, and thank you all for being part of our vision to make sure an entire city be proud of our recreation actions for the future. It was really great the way everybody came together, worked with you and your crew, and I think it was successful.
No, thank you very much, Jim. Appreciate that. There'll be some very interesting recreation committee meetings, and there'll be some very interesting council meetings to discuss how these projects go ahead and how we phase these all in over the next 10 or 15 years there. So thank you very much, and thank you for your business there. Thank you. Councillor Witt or Patricia?
Yeah, and just a comment of appreciation. Thank you.
Just get close to the
all the
microphone.
work,
There. Get close to the microphone.
Pardon me?
Get close to the microphone.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, just a word of appreciation and for all involved. It was a lengthy process and one that I look forward to seeing the fruition of it come out. One thing I wanted to mention, though, is in regards to the webinars, the public webinars, and the input and participation. That's something I'd like to see more of in the future for, you know, whether it be recreation or other plans moving forward with council. That was very successful. We had a lot of participation. We need to have our constituents speak up more. Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, we'll go on to our next presentation. And it's from the public health perspective of the City of Temiskaming Shores Master Plan Recreational Plan. And Janet Smale is here from the Temiskaming Health Unit to make a presentation. Welcome, Janet.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks for finding a new microphone. I was afraid I might not be able to speak, but you found a clean one. So thank you very much.
Yes.
We're certainly glad to be here tonight to represent the Temiskaming Health Unit in delivering to you this evening a public health unit perspective on the Temiskaming Shores Recreation Master Plan. So thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here with your worship and the council and the public here this evening. Thank you. Next slide. So just in a brief overview, this presentation will cover the role of public health, just a little bit about the process we used for the review, some key points and opportunities for continued collaboration. Again, we're just going to be highlighting some of the top comments that we had and a little bit more of the feedback, but the complete commentary is in the package. So in public health, our work is guided by the Ontario Public Health Standards and the Health Promotion and Protection Act. And in our role, we work to promote healthy public policy, health equity, and enable community partners to support health. And as a part of the Healthy Communities and Health Promotion approach, the Health Unit undertook a review of the City Recreation Master Plan. So the review is intended to assess the plan, validate some of the content within, and determine where actions and priorities ally with public health, and also encourage opportunities for further health and community promoting initiatives. Okay, next slide. Thank you. So again, the process for the review included a scan of other public health unit work, review of the related municipal plans and some of the key evidence. And the contents of the review and the comments are based on strategies known to prevent chronic disease and injury, improve healthy growth and development, and provide general well-being while considering health equity throughout the plan. The review comments are structured to match that of the existing Recreation Master Plan in terms of the key recreational development themes. So overall, the feedback for the plan was that it was very well thought out and it will definitely be extremely valuable to the community. So we appreciate that this was undertaken for sure. We're certainly excited about the work and acknowledge that work of the city and of Trace Planning and Design in the development of the plan. So just a brief comment, however, about some of the voices and the feedback that was incorporated into the plan, and that there may be some voices that might be underrepresented just given some of the consultation methods, which might include youth under 25, Indigenous and Francophone populations, and potentially those without internet access as the consultations move to an online sort of status with the introduction of COVID. So we certainly urge Council to consider that, that there might be some voices underrepresented as the plan is implemented. Next slide, please. So the importance of municipal recreation. We certainly know that you yourselves might know the value of recreation for sure, but we want to endorse that we too feel that recreation is incredibly important for a healthy and vibrant community, and to recognize the full benefits of recreation
it would be beneficial, beneficial in the plan to have a comprehensive definition of recreation that includes the full continuum of recreation and leisure. A common definition for recreation would help decision makers agree on some of the important components of the recreation, its scope and breadth in the context of the city, and could assist key players in making decisions about recreation and what it means to the city and to community members. Next slide. So we definitely felt very confident and excited to have the parks included certainly in the plan. It's certainly a great strength that there's an emphasis on parks and definitely the provision for all ages. So access to the park enhances physical, mental, social, and spiritual health, and we'd certainly like to acknowledge that. For children, parks foster active play and stimulate their growth and development. And furthermore, active transportation behaviors that are developed in childhood definitely continue on into adolescence and adulthood. So they certainly help to stimulate lifelong behaviors. Children in particular require play structures in parks that meet their active needs, and they prefer play structures that are perceived as a challenge and benefit more greatly from these, and they will be more active around structures that are a little bit more challenging. So there's also benefit to exploring different types of parks, such as nature-based, loose parks, and those that have differing structures. So for adolescents, access to nature and parks can help buffer the stressors in life, and it decreases antisocial behaviors, violence, crime, and underemployment. For adults and seniors, parks and outdoor spaces can facilitate an active lifestyle, but it can also help them build behaviors that are then modeled to family and to the community. Also, they have an economic value and are tremendously helpful in helping to boost land values and property taxes and attract residents and businesses. So a few of the recommendations just moving forward and thinking about the plan is that public health advocates for accessibility for all age groups and populations to these resources and parks. We recommend including park structures and features such as adaptive play equipment, wheelchair accessible paths, and places for individuals to comfortably sit and talk. And efforts should be made to prioritize future developments to neighborhoods that might be currently underserved to help equalize some of the assets sharing amongst these resources. Next slide, thank you. Thank you. So with trails, trails and active trail networks are certainly an asset, and they're inexpensive to use, and they're certainly vital again to the active and healthy communities. So the recommendations are parks and green spaces and recreational trails should be an interconnected system. I think that was certainly mentioned and emphasized. Connected neighborhood hubs to community hubs could ensure everyone has access to recreation regardless of transportation and mobility. And the concept of connected hubs is additionally important to consider for access. There's also mention in the plan about sports, fitness, and fitness clustering along the waterfront. Just note that that certainly clustering is definitely a recognized strategy, but not to let that limit those that live outside the area that might not be able to access those due to limited mobility or to transportation. Next slide. So by the year 2026, the population projection for the region is that approximately 30% of the people will be between the ages of 60 and 79. So we're certainly looking at a large portion of the population. So just bearing in mind, it might be important to consider this in the design and implementation of some of the plan and the facilities. Meeting spaces and common areas within neighborhoods are important to consider as well. They can act as social areas. Additional design recommendations when it comes to this area could be lighting and transparency to reduce dark corners that can help increase safety. Environmental design such as building clear sightlines can help with crime prevention. Next slide. Regional networks. So in regards to regional networks, Additional access to recreation facilities and resources for residents in the district will be beneficial, and particularly those from rural areas who may have limited access to such facilities and assets. Moving on, thank you. So as a regional hub, we recommend the municipality consider programs and services, venues, and potentially a seniors-focused recreation hub to meet the health and wellness needs of this growing population. Next slide. For emerging recreation, a diverse menu of recreation options would be beneficial so more people could engage in recreation, and in particular consider the needs of, again, of the growing older adult population. Next slide. For urban centers, community members would benefit from having accessible multi-use activity centers that meet the needs of everybody. And we certainly urge consideration of transportation barriers that may limit access to some people. For short-term facility refinement, to promote health, existing facilities could be enhanced to ensure they're physically and financially accessible to all residents. And frequently visited locations such as municipal buildings and recreational facilities could include end-of-trip facilities such as bike racks and lockers to encourage use of trails and active travel. Okay, next slide. For long-term facilities, it will be important that the plan meets the needs of the entire population. A health perspective would be to discourage the municipality from valuing recreation assets in a singular sense, such as the total population per asset, but rather recreational assets could be valued on many indicators and their perceived and actual contributions to community members' health. Next slide. For sports teams, active participation in recreation is influenced by access to programs due to financial barriers and access to equipment. So recommendations include to facilitate access to all populations, particularly those living in low income, to make sure they have proper equipment and access to programs through program assistance, specialized programming, and recreation subsidy. Next slide, thank you. For municipal support, for volunteer and other organizations, it's important to help with activities and initiatives that will help diversify and increase what is offered. It will be important to consider access to internet in the district for this area. Additional recommendations include developing and adopting an access to recreation policy to promote inclusive and safe and affordable quality recreation for all populations. Thank you. So overall, we just want to reiterate from a public health perspective that we were very pleased with the plan. We think you've done a tremendous job for residents to help plan for the future recreation needs in the city of Temiskaming Shores. A few additional considerations that could be noted include the plan doesn't specifically mention climate change, which is a priority area for the health unit. So many initiatives in the plan can be approached with a climate change lens in mind. Again, we'd like to reiterate again the importance of having the active travel plan developed. We feel it's very crucial to the city of Temiskaming Shores, as was mentioned, to ensure that all these assets are connected in a system. So we strongly encourage that the city go ahead with making that a priority in the planning in the short term. And we encourage the application of a health equity lens in the plan implementation, including commitment to address the needs of the populations, remove barriers to recreation, access and ensure no population is disadvantaged or privileged over another. So opportunities for ongoing public health support. So the health unit is certainly well positioned to support the plan implementation going forward with ongoing collaboration, evidence, and community engagement. So in conclusion, again, we'd just like to share that the plan is well thought out, and in particular will go a long way to creating health equity through access to recreation for both indoor and outdoor recreation spaces through the use of free and natural resources, parks, and open spaces. We certainly look forward to supporting the city in the implementation and recognition of this plan. And our last slide, the fancy one. Any questions or comments?
Thank you, Jan. Appreciate that presentation. Councilor MacArthur, any comment?
Yes, thank you very much for that presentation. I've been the chair of the Recreation Committee for 14 years, and I just want to assure you that everyone is under the same umbrella. The one comment that you did make, or in the presentation, was about age and gender, and people that make more money than others, francophone, indigenous. Everyone is looked at, everyone's treated fairly, and I've seen it, and I just want to let you know that it'll continue to be everybody's recreation department. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? If not, I appreciate your presentation there. We'll keep this in mind, and thank you for coming out tonight. Appreciate that. Thanks, Janet.
It seems like you seniors get a lot,
Yes, Jesse, we're doing more and more things for seniors. I heard your comment, so. Moving on, the rest of our agenda, item number 10 is communications, and 10A is a letter from Susie Fournier from the municipal clerk for the municipality of Temiskaming as regarding support for the broadband access petition that was received on August the 6th, received for our information. 10B is a letter from myself regarding the rising cost of municipal insurance to John Vantoff. That's received for our information. 10C is a letter from Susie Fournier, again from the municipal clerk for the municipality of Temiskaming regarding support for the internet service providers reseller ability. And that letter was received August 27th for information. 10D is a letter from Brian Primrose, the Ontario Centre for Archaeological Research and Education, regarding the concerns for the disposition of the Nilisquard Library. That letter is received on August 28th for information. 10E is a letter from the Temiskaming Health Unit. It's actually a report for the 2020 second quarter. That's received for our information. 10F is a letter from Robert Baker, the management forester for the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, regarding the inspection of the MNRF approved prescribed burn plan for the slash piles burning in the Temiskaming Management Unit. And that letter is received on September the 1st. And another letter from Robert Baker in response to last council meeting's questions regarding the ministry or the aerial herbicide projects in the Temiskaming Management Unit. That was spraying was done during the week of August the that was actually finished by August 20th. So all that information was included in your package there as well that I received back from Robert Baker there. So that's all the correspondence. I got a motion, be resolved that the City Council agrees to deal with communication items 10A through 10G according to the agenda references. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Move for Councilor Perrier, second by Councilor Jelly. Any comments on those correspondence items? So, Councilor Foley.
It's just in regards to the Temiskaming Health Unit, the board report to the Board of Health. If you look at page 6 in the harm reduction program and you look at the amount of needles and pipes and safe snorting kits that are it's going up every year and every year. I'm just wondering if you bring that up to your mayors, like the TMA, with them, if that could be brought up and maybe discussed as a district, because it's obviously a district-wide problem. Thank you.
Yeah, something can be brought up with TMA, and we brought up TMAG as well there. I mean, we're finding more and more used needles. Public Works are finding more used needles under the bridge and everything else there, so it has become more of an issue. More people seem to be using in this area. We're no different than Timmins and some of the other larger cities, but it is an issue in this area, and we need probably to address our wellness and well-being committee that we've set up there. Hopefully we can get together a program there that can help in the long term and try and reduce down the amount of abuse to the drug system in this area, so we can bring that up for sure. Thanks, Jesse. All in favor of that motion? That is carried. Item number 11, Committees of Council, Community and Regional. Motion reads, be it resolved the following minutes be accepted for information. A, the minutes of the Temiskaming Board of Health meeting held on June the 3rd, 2020. Mover and seconder for that motion. Moved by Councillor Whalen, second by Councillor Foley. All in favor? That is carried. There are no committees of council interim department reports. Any reports by members of council tonight? Councillor Jelly.
Just briefly, Your Worship, on the 10th of September, I had an OAPSB virtual meeting. I just want to report back that from the OAPSB perspective, things are moving very slowly with the government as far as the amendments to the Police Services Act. There is some discussion interchanges, but nothing of significance has come to light at this point. The other items were brought up, and as we hear every day, we have a fall labor seminar every year. It's on November 12th to 13th this year. It will be going virtual, and it's basically going to be of more interest to Section 31, in other words, municipal police officers, than Section 10 OPP boards. So we'll be bringing that back to our next meeting, but it would appear that there's not going to be a whole lot there for us this year, simply because there hasn't been a lot going on with the government. The spring conference, which is held in May, we're slated for Niagara Falls. We're taking the position this year with the possible second wave of COVID-19. We're going to try to get out of that contract and go virtual with the anticipation that should things settle down, we might go back live, but at this point it'll be virtual. Something we all want to hear, our OAPSB dues will go up 2% in 2021. That's a multi-year thing that we had discussed. I think this is the last year of the raises. And again, just pointing out that things have been slow around the province. As far as locally, we're going to have board meetings. I'm not having very many zone meetings. Very difficult because of the size of our zone to get everybody together. We are working on things now and hopefully get a zone meeting going in the fall. But things are moving somewhat slowly on that end of policing. Thank you.
Any other reports, members of council? Just wanted to let everybody know the virtual fall fair is going on this weekend. So they're going to have a virtual harvest queen contest. They'll have virtual entertainment. They'll have a virtual opening ceremony, and I record an opening statement, a couple minutes statement for them for their welcome everybody to the virtual fall fair 2020. So it's a little different this year, going all virtual as well. So, Councilor MacArthur.
I'd like to ask you, Mayor, who makes the decision on Halloween and the Santa Claus parade?
Well,
Jack-o'-lantern and Santa Claus.
Okay. It's open for discussion what this council wants to have an opinion on what we do as far as the Halloween night. I mean, the province hasn't made a decision at this point. I assume that the Premier will be coming out with some kind of statement shortly for the province. Now, it's a whole new experience with COVID there. So, I mean, if the council's got any opinions of what we should be doing or what we should be promoting for this area, we can certainly discuss that. And if not, we'll wait till the province. Chris?
We could also bring it up at our next Board of Health municipal call, yes. Which will be coming up next Friday. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll basically have to take direction from the medical officer of health there as to what we do there. So, for this area. So, any other comments? So, if not, does there any notice of motions tonight? Seeing none, we'll jump into the new business. 15A is a memo 012-2020 RS, the Recreation Master Plan final report for public comments. I've got a motion be resolved the council for the City of Temiskaming Shores acknowledge receipt of memo 012-2020 RS for information. Moving a second for that motion, Councillor Jelly, second by Councillor MacArthur. Any comments? All in favor? That is carried. 15B is support for the 20th Annual Child Care Worker and Early Childhood Educator Appreciation Day. And the motion reads, whereas years of research confirms the benefits of high-quality child care for young children's intellectual, emotional, social, and physical development and later life outcomes. And whereas child care promotes the well-being of children in response to the needs of parents and the broader community by supporting quality of life so that citizens can fully participate in and contribute to the economic and social life of their community. And whereas trained and early childhood educators and child care staff are the key to quality in early learning and child care programs and champions for children. Now therefore be it resolved that Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores hereby proclaims October the 22nd, 2020 as the 20th Annual Child Care Worker and Early Childhood Educator Appreciation Day in recognition of the education, dedication, and commitment of child care workers to children, their families, and the quality of life for this community. So, Councillor Whalen, second by Councillor LaFerrier. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. 15C, the signing authorities. I got a motion be resolved that Council of the City of Temiskaming Shores approves the following as signing authorities for the City of Temiskaming Shores. It's myself or Councillor Jeff LaFerrier as an alternate, plus Laura Lee McLeod, the treasurer, or Julie Gregoire as an alternate. That Council authorizes the mechanical or electronic reproduction of signatures on a check of the municipality in accordance with Section 287 of the Municipal Act 2001, Section 25, as amended. And further, the Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores hereby repeals Resolution 2019-002, dated December the 3rd, 2018. So, moving and second for that motion. Councillor Foley, second by Councillor Jelly. So, any comments? All in favor? That is carried. 15D is Administrative Report CS 036-2020, the Municipal Employee Group Benefit Plan. And the motion reads, be it resolved that Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores acknowledge receipt of Administrative Report CS 036-2020, and that Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores direct staff to renew the Great West Life Employee Benefit Plan administered through Gallagher Benefit Services Canada Group Incorporated, and the Council approves the Municipal Employee Benefit Plan with premiums of $390,732 for the 2020-2021 year, in addition to the cost paid by the city for health benefits as they are incurred with applicable administrative fees under the administrative service only portion of the plan. So, moving to second to that motion, Councillor Ferrier, second by Councillor MacArthur. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Okay, Councillor MacArthur.
I would just like to let the taxpayers know that use the community hall, that this is going to be during the day, and if there are events at night.
Wait.
Am I on the wrong one? I'm sorry.
We'll get to the next one here.
I'm sorry. I'm one ahead of myself.
We're voting on the Great West Life one there. So, all in favor of that one? So, that is carried. Oh yeah, we'll read this next motion here. So Councillor Hewitt, you got a comment?
Yeah, just in regards to the increase and the letter that you wrote in regards to item, geez, I don't have it. Was this, what was the comparison in regards to the increase with, for the Great West Life? Was there a comparison? I know it was 25% increased in regards to our
liability insurance rates went up quite a bit, if that's what you're talking about. But Shelley, you want to?
The letter that Mayor Kidd wrote was in regards to liability insurance, and this admin report is for municipal employee insurance. So, sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, I understand that, Shelley, thanks. But basically I wanted to know what was the, after you have an increase for this, what Great West Life had proposed in
Was there an increase in their part premiums this year over last year is what the question is.
Yeah. 25%.
It was 25%, yeah. Okay. That answers that question. Okay. Moving on. 15E, Administrative Report RS 009-2020, the ESCSM lease agreement for the Nilisquid Community Hall. And I got a motion be resolved the Council for the City of Temiskaming Shores acknowledge receipt of Administrative Report RS 009-2020, and that Council directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaw to enter into a lease agreement with École Secondaire Catholique Sainte Marie for the use of the hall located in the Nilisquid Community Hall from September the 21st, 2020 through to December 18th, 2020 for consideration at the September 5th, 2020 regular Council meeting. So, we're moving to second, Councillor Ferrier, second by Councillor Hewitt. Comments? Councilor McCarthy.
Sorry about that. No, I just wanted to let the folks know that actually use the community hall in Uliskard, that this group will be using it in the daytime, and that pickleball and other events that go on during the evening will still go on, just in case there's some confusion that these students are going to be there in the evening as well.
Yeah, most weeks they're only using it 3 days a week as well, I believe, Matt? So there'll be other days that the seniors can still use it, and some of the other groups as well. So just want to commend Matt and Paul and them for accommodating the ESCSM and being able to use our community hall there. I know their gymnasium had sustained some major damage during the summer, and they're working diligently trying to replace the floor in their gymnasium. So this is a great help to that school to provide that service there. So thank you. All in favor of that motion? That is carried. Moving on to bylaws. Motion be it resolved that bylaw 2020-098, being a bylaw to authorize entering into a lease agreement with a Cole Secondary Catholic St. Marie for the rental space at the Uliskard Community Hall, be hereby introduced and given first and second reading. So, mover and second, Councillor Jelly, second by Councillor Foley. Any other comments? All in favor? That is carried. And motion be resolved that bylaw 2020-088 is the Recreation Master Plan, and bylaw 2020-098 be given third and final reading, be signed by the mayor and clerk, and the corporate seal fixed there too. So, moved by Councillor Ferrier, second by Councillor Foley. Any last comments? All in favor? That is carried. And did you want to make a comment there? I see your note there, but so. Just moving on to item number 17 is the schedule of meetings, and the next regular meeting is Tuesday, October the 6th, 2020, and the next regular meeting after that is Tuesday, October the 20th, 2020. So we've reached the second question and answer period. Anybody got a question of council at this point? Anybody from the chat box or anything? Anybody in the public, any questions of council at this point? So, yes, Councillor Hewitt.
Not a question, and I meant to bring this up earlier, but I'm not sure if you asked if there was any questions in regards to the communications, but I'd like to bring up Ryan Primrose's letter from OCARE, and I would like council to consider that this at least be brought back for discussion at a further council meeting. It's in regards to the disposal of the library and some of the decisions that were made, and I definitely support that some of the decisions were made hastily by us.
That motion was already voted on and passed, so unless one of the original voters in favor of that motion want to reconsider their vote, then that motion has already been voted on. So.
Yeah, I realize that the letter basically asked for us to consider.
We cannot consider that motion again during this same calendar year. So, if they want to bring it back next calendar year, we can look at it next calendar year. But that motion's already been voted on and passed, so that's a done deal. We'd have to have a motion for reconsideration by one of the people that did vote in favor of it, first of all, and then we need a 2/3 vote to reconsider that during the same calendar year. So unless, yes, Councilor McCarthy?
Yes, if I'm not mistaken, that letter was sent to us after or before the vote. Okay, pardon me, after the vote.
After the vote. Yeah.
I read that letter and I did answer it, but we did have a vote. Unfortunately, you missed out on the vote, but that's why it passed.
It was voted 4-1 in favor of passing the resolution at that council meeting in August. So.
Yeah, I realized that it was voted on August 11th. Unfortunately, I wasn't here. Obviously, you'd know what I would vote for, but in regards to the letter, I certainly didn't see this letter until tonight's package.
No, there's actually two versions of the letter. I received the first version and I responded that letter plus another letter from another lady, and then the revised version came to all council as well. So, but it has been addressed with Mr. Primrose, and I mean, it's been voted on. We can't deal with it right at this point. So, Chris, comment?
Logan and I did review the procedural bylaw just to make sure. So, in the not to contradict you, and I know we're past the notice of motion stage as well, but so there's a couple steps in this. The first step is to determine whether or not council wishes to reconsider. So you're right, normally within a calendar year you wouldn't reconsider a vote. If you want something reconsidered, then a member of council would have to bring forward a notice of motion. That notice to have it reconsidered. That notice of motion on the whether or not to reconsider would require, as Mayor Kidd mentioned, 2/3 majority, so 5 of the 7 councillors voting in favor of reconsidering. Then you would actually vote on the matter again. So the first step would be whether or not you would even reconsider it or not within this year. The purpose really of that in your procedural bylaw is you don't want every meeting to be reconsidering the decisions that you've made, but it is a tool that you can use in the event you didn't feel you had enough information at the time and you do wish to have something reconsidered, then that tool is there. But the first step is the 2/3 majority vote. And we did check in the old procedural bylaw, it used to be the person, you had to vote, you had to be a person who voted in the opposite means. The current procedural bylaw just, I believe Logan just says any member can introduce a motion for reconsideration. So if you wanted, we could have a motion put on the October 6th meeting. At that time, it's just a motion to actually consider reconsideration, if that makes sense. So, okay, but is that what, so you would have to, we're past the notice of motion stage, so it would be at the chair's leave to add that as a notice of motion that we would add to the October 6th meeting.
If somebody wants to put forward that notice of motion, we can address it at the next council meeting. So it's going to take.
I would certainly put forth that motion if you'll consider that.
It's going to take a 2/3 vote to even bring this back to the table for discussion. So at that time, so okay. Well, I'll let the clerk note that we have a notice of motion to bring back that issue back to this council for a vote on reconsideration at the October. What date that is? 6th.
October 6th.
Yeah. So, okay. Anything else at this point? There's no. Yes. We didn't have our second. We had our second question and answer period. Sorry. Yes. So.
I was just wondering what the date was for the tender on that the Liskeard Library.
We haven't actually issued a request for tender at this point. We had a corporate services meeting a week and a half ago where we discussed what the minimum tenders were going to be. So we've decided on that. We have to move forward now after this meeting in October 6th to actually set the date when this request for tenders is going out. If the council's going to reconsider it, they'll have to reconsider it and discuss it at that point. So it'll be sometime in October before it goes out now.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? If not, we've got closed session tonight. I got a motion to be resolved that council agrees to convene in closed session at 7:45 to discuss the following matters: adoption of the September 1st, 2020 closed session minutes. Under section 239(2)(f) of the Municipal Act 2001, the advice subject to solicitor-client privilege for stock transportation land use agreement. So we have a mover and a seconder for that motion to go into Councillor Whalen, second by Councillor MacArthur. So all in favor? We are adjourned for 10 minutes and we'll come back into closed session. So thanks everybody.